I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. The invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Paul Stobbs. We are having our fundraiser for production of film number 3. If you'd like to make a donation to help us out, we have links in the description. Everything is greatly appreciated. We're having fun with this film. It's going to be a little different from the previous. It's going to be a sci-fi comedy mockumentary featuring myself and many of your favorite authors, podcasters, content creators. The film's going to make light of the woo that I discuss every day here, and it'll be a fun excursion from the previous films. Like I said, if you'd like to help with that fundraiser, anything is greatly appreciated. Be sure to check out my previous films. Occult Louisiana's on Tubi, Roku, Apple, and a few more. Doors of Perception is on Amazon Prime. We are booking guests for March. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome Paul Stobbs. He is a researcher, content creator, and author of The Nephilim Look Like Clowns. Paul, welcome. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Thanks so much for coming on. I'm really looking forward to sharing your work with the audience. You've made some fascinating connections and present a very compelling argument about the possible nature of these nefarious entities known as Nephilim. I personally never liked clowns. I've never really been afraid of them, just thought they were really annoying. But in my perspective, they have this strange aura of darkness or malevolence around them. So I'm really looking forward to getting into your work. Before we do, this is your first time on, let the audience know a little bit more about yourself and how to find out more.
Sure. So my name's Paul, and I run a YouTube channel called Understanding Conspiracy, if you couldn't tell. And I'm also the author of the book The Nephilim Looked Like Clowns, and that actually comes from a YouTube series started in 2016, just after the clown sightings of that time. And I created a 42 episodes. It's up to like 45 episodes now since then. So it's been spanning almost 10 years. And I wrote the book 2 years ago, about a year and a half ago, in July of 2023 is when it was published, to kind of surmise in writing and in a lot more detail with all the references and everything to kind of back up my claims, the thesis that is The Nephilim Look Like Clowns. So the first book is this thing here. It's about 300 and something pages with, let's have a look. I got up to 383 references. It ended with Jung, funnily enough, and the collective consciousness work. But I formulated what I believe to be a sound understanding of ancestor spirit worship all around the earth, and the practices these cultures do to channel spirits, and the costumes that they wear are all basically variations of what the West would call clown features. And there's a good reason for that. It's because the things that they're communicating with are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, strictly from a biblical perspective, which is where I take the work. And the Nephilim did indeed have clown-like features: white skin, red hair, multicolored patterns all over the flesh as well, on top of that white base, and feathers in many cases as well, frills around the neck, just like lizards, because they were in fact half seraphim angel, which is dragon. Fiery flying serpent is what the word seraphim comes from, and humans kind of mixed together. And when you mix those two things together, you get a weird, wide, grinning, red-lipped looking dragon clown-looking monster full of colors, and it gets really weird, And my work is basically trying to prove through examples of people who commune with spirits and the costumes they wear that they are trying to mirror something in the spirit realm, and they have a very specific set of aesthetics. And they all have their own names for it, sure, but that's basically what I discovered. And then my work also took me down into the history of clowning and clowns. And it turns out the costume of a modern clown is based after the Rakshasa demons of India, which are their flavor of Nephilim specifically. And even prior to that, the costume of Harlequin, which was the first proto-clown of the Commedia dell'arte coming out of Italy in the Middle Ages, was also modeled after the European version of Nephilim, which were called the Wild Man. So historically, I've discovered that the clown costume has always been a representation of the demonic. And anthropologically, I've discovered that when people channel spirits, which are the disembodied spirits of Nephilim, they dress like clowns. And the Freemasons and secret societies played a huge role in popularizing and creating the modern costume we call the clown, based off of an amalgam caricatured image of all these other cultures around the earth who dress this way for that very purpose of channeling spirits. It's just in the West, it's occult. It's hidden. You're not supposed to know that that's what it's for. And it has a double meaning, which is exoteric for the public. It's just something fun for the kids, as the occult tend to like to do. So that's basically my work in a nutshell. Very quickly surmised, but again, this is 10 years in the making. This is not just something I've come up with out of nothing. It came to me, and we'll get into the story of how it all kind of came together, I suppose. But that's what I'm primarily known for now. I'm the Nephilim clown guy, but I'm also an eclectic conspiracy theorist, a scattershot conspiracy theorist of many topics. I cover a lot of things. Rarely clowns on the channel much these days, to be honest, because I feel like I've said it all. But I'm very much into transhumanism, AI, the shifting changes of societal changes and long-term Freemasonic agendas coming to fruition, and I kind of focus on the meta of the truth of culture as well. I have a podcast called The Truth of Therapy Sessions, which is about coping and dealing with learning horrible, disgusting truths about the nature of our reality and the pitfalls and the journeys we go on, losing friends and family along the way, it's kind of like a coping podcast every week to help those people on their journey in the community kind of not feel so alone, I suppose. So I do a lot of things, but that's I suppose that's it. I'll stop there. I've said enough. That's me in a nutshell.
Actually, that was a great introduction. A lot of information. We're going to try and break down as much as we can. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this and sharing your work with everyone. Let's start with a bit about your journey. Your show is Understanding Conspiracy. Tell us a little bit about your conspiracy journey of awareness. How did everything start popping off for you?
Yeah, so I became a truther, I suppose, in 2011, 2010, around that time. It's hard to know the exact moment, but I knew I've always kind of been a bit of a questioner of everything going on around me, but I think I came into knowledge of the nefarious agendas around that time, around the 2011 period. And it was in the build up to the 2012 end of the world stuff. That was kind of big then, and I suppose I fell more into the new age camp during that time. I wouldn't call myself like a hippie type, I wasn't trying to align my chakras and putting orgone pyramids under the towers or anything. But at the same time, I was very much a psychedelic explorer. I was looking to understand consciousness through psychedelics at that time. And you naturally fall into these subgroups and meet these people who are in that world who are very much peace, light, consciousness, love, energy, and all that type. But I was never really like that. But they're kind of your people when you're in that camp, the psychedelic community. So I guess I was kind of swimming in that thought, very much of the Taoist perspective, trying to understand consciousness and duality and the meanings behind existence and where we sit within the grand cosmos of the universe. And is there a God? Are we God collectively? I was kind of battling with all that stuff around that period of time. I wasn't raised religious, quite atheistic, anti-religious, if anything, during my edgy early teen years, but a-religious would be the best way to describe my upbringing. It just wasn't a thought. So as I grew older, I had an experience with Salvia Divinorum at 16, which kind of shattered my perceptions of the not being a spirit realm, and after that reality kind of melted away. Because it was a big hype at that time. YouTube was new, and there was just videos everywhere of people doing salvia, and I was fascinated. What are they seeing that's making them laugh like hyenas? That type of thing. And my curiosity got the better of me, and you could legally just buy it at that time, just at a head shop, which sells bongs and stuff like that. It was just there behind the counter in a little bag. So I got some 40 times strength, and I did it with my friend, and that I saw some stuff. I went through a portal into another dimension, and I lost my sense of identity and self, and I became delirious and like manically insane from it.
Wow.
In the 10 minutes I was there, which felt like an eternity, but when I came back, I'd been changed. I was kind of like, okay, so I was wrong. Everything that I see is not all that there is. What the hell's going on? And that was it then. I suppose from that moment, I was always kind of on a journey to discover and understand the spiritual nature of reality and what the truth really is, really. I'm an artist. I've always studied art my entire life, and a musician as well. My degree is in fine art. And after going through those early processes of my teen years, I kind of dabbled in smoking cannabis every single day and did a few more trips of salvia here and there. But when I got to university, I lived a very stereotypical art student life. I was just drugs, sex, rock and roll, partying every night, while rocking up to class barely sober, or hungover and not really paying attention. But art for me comes naturally. I never really have to study to be an artist. I can just draw and paint and always have been able to. So to me, I never really cared for that. They couldn't teach me anything, but I needed the degree to be in the world of art, to be taken seriously is how I kind of viewed it. So I was there, and my subject matter was very much of the psychedelic stuff, like consciousness, sacred geometry, these type of things. And it's very easy to make sacred geometry when you're an artist, because it's just squares and compasses and circles and flower of life stuff and lines, and it's very fun, so I was taking advantage of that. That's what I was doing at that time period, 2010 to 2011. I think 2011 is when I joined university, and I graduated in 2014. So these 3 years were my pinnacle moment, really, to get into conspiracy, because I was already in that psychedelic realm, trip reports and the rest of it, trying to search for answers. Universities when I really got access to like the harder stuff, the LSD, your psilocybin and your DMT and things like this. So I did work my way up and get through these things while listening to people like Joe Rogan was really popular at the time, talking about DMT jesters and saying F you, sticking the finger up at you and all this type of thing. I pretty much listened to the entire historical back catalogue of Terence McKenna by this point, and Alan Watts as well, talking about Taoism and the rest of it. And I was pretty much in that camp of thought, about what religious thought, if as far as religion went for that kind of thing. Like I thought collectively we were all one, and we're all just kind of God who's forgot that he's God, to experience what it's like to not be God in a sense. But there was always like a back of my mind feeling like something's wrong with that, because tangibly speaking, if I am a God, my life is terrible. Like things are getting really bad. It's not really much direction or sense being made, and it always bothered me, so I kept digging, and you fall into conspiracy stuff eventually, because those two worlds kind of meld into each other at that point. At that time, it was like UFO phenomena was at a height. The end of the world was coming because of the pole shifts and the Mayan calendar. Then you start learning about megalithic structures, and you start learning about the pyramids and all the dimensions within them and the representations to the rest of the earth, and then the lines connecting all the megalithic structures, and it's ancient civilization and the evil controllers, and then you start getting into secret society. So I just snowballed in that 2011 period. Just went headfirst into it, and I ended up making it my artwork about it, because that's what I was doing. That was my subject matter, that I would make work about. And so it became one with my degree, conspiracy research and this search for meaning, I suppose. And it was a hell of a ride, and it's a blur now in hindsight, like all the conspiracy stuff. Like I soaked in so much information those early days and saw the logos everywhere, and the predictive programming, and I think the Olympics were around the same time as well, and everyone was decoding that, and it was all quite new and fresh. It was like a golden age of conspiracy research, and there was factions. You had the Christians and the New Agers and the 1% and the We Are Legion and all this type of thing, and Anonymous was around. It was a really exciting, crazy time for truth or culture, and I was in it. I was just in the throes, and I got to a point where I started to bump into the Christian perspective. And I was like, nah, that can't be it. No way. That has nothing to do with anything truth. There's no truth there as far as I'm aware, It's got to be this Taoist consciousness thing, But I kept brushing up with this understanding and this obvious fact that it's kind of, the New Age religion really, really works well for that New World Order they're trying to build. It seems to be the very religion they want to implement for the New World Order. It's basically just Luciferianism light, you know, without saying it. And I couldn't quite knock that feeling of something's going on there. And as I was experiencing things like harder psychedelics, doing DMT trips as well, this is coming past the 2012 period, towards the end of my degree, like 2014. I got to the end of university and I was kind of like, I had no answers still. I had all this horrible, terrifying information in my brain about how the world really works and the nefarious nature of the secret society problem and the rest of it, you know. And I suppose I adopted quite a Gnostic worldview of like the demiurge and archons.
That's going around these days.
I didn't really know. It is, isn't it? It's really popular now, even more so. But I didn't know what to do with it because, tangibly speaking, my life was terrible. I had no job prospects. I was broke. I was mentally drained. All my synapses had been burned out. I was physically exhausted. I had no answers to my journey of questions, you know, and these philosophies I've been following weren't explaining things to me in a way that actually works tangibly. But I had been hearing a lot of preachers and like Pentecostal types and charismatic types and Catholic types of all varying degrees of Christendom, you know, and then the truther types, which are a weird breed of conspiracy, you know, of Christian. And I just got to this point where I was at a university, end of university, and I was at a stag do, which is a bachelor party in America, I think you call them. So it was for my now brother-in-law, and I was away from home, miles away from university, in this hotel for the weekend. And I basically just asked God to show me. Like, I was like, okay, if you're real, fine, show me, prove it. I'm yours if that's the case, because I've given everything else a chance and I haven't got a clue. I'm lost. I'm hopeless. I have no direction. I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. Help me. And I ran a bath. And nothing happened, really. Like, you know, nothing really happened after I asked. So I ran a bath, and I hadn't had a bath in a tub in years. I mean, years. Like, I'd only ever lived in houses that had cubicles, like stand-up shower cubicles. So this was like I must have been like 15 last time I was underwater at a swimming bath or swimming pool or something. You know, I don't swim. I don't go swimming very often. So I had this bath, and as soon as I went under the water, I just shot out the thing as fast as I could possibly do it, because I had this feeling rush through me that like electricity. I couldn't explain it, and I just had to. I thought I was having a panic attack. I thought the whole weight of the world crushing weight had come upon me, my nervous system or something, and I was panicking. But it was warm. It wasn't actually a bad feeling. It was just a shock, you know. And I think in hindsight, I may have accidentally baptized myself. I think that was one of those moments, you know, like a joke from God himself, some kind of weird, ironic moment. But from that day, I will say things did tangibly change. And I finally had that sense of real, tangible, transformative spiritual experience I thought I was seeking. Suddenly, I didn't enjoy smoking weed anymore. I didn't enjoy smoking cigarettes anymore. I couldn't drink anymore without feeling this sense of like, this is wrong. And you have to understand, I've never felt that up until that point. Like, I enjoyed smoking cannabis and smoking cigarettes. In fact, my identity was imbued with being the guy that did that type of thing, you know? So it was who am I if I'm not the guy who smokes weed? Who am I? You know, as I was confronted with all these questions as well. Like, and I suppose I had a real, for the first time, like, conviction of the Holy Spirit moment about my sin and what life I was actually living and the consequences of that life. And I carried that with me for years as I kind of slowly dropped all these things away. And now I'm sober. I don't smoke cannabis. I've been cannabis free since 2018. I've just got off nicotine, slowly dripping down the amount I use in a vape pen, and I got off that 2 years ago. So it took a long time, you know, but I did drop all these addictions. I don't do any psychedelics now or anything like that. And I just don't have the urge to. I would say I was born again. It's a good way to describe it. I became something else. And it was through this feeling of guilt I'd never felt before, this conviction. And from that moment, you know, I said, okay, fine. All right. So, all right, God, I made some promises, you know, I guess I'll keep up my end of the bargain in a way. And I had this YouTube channel, created as an end result of my degree, because my artwork became about conspiracy. So I had this understanding conspiracy channel, and I kind of made like an end of year show where I was just sat there at a desk and people asked me questions from a list I made of conspiracy theories, like, what's this about? And I explained it to them so they could understand it. And that was me for 3 hours in a gallery, you know. And I had this channel, and I just set off talking about the world around us as best I could. And the ethos was, I kind of want to have a channel that makes the content I wanted to see, which I rarely saw when I was on YouTube. Because what I found was a lot of the stuff on YouTube price that was quite sensational and hard to share, because it was just too much. You know, it was a little bit Requiem for a Dream blasting in the background while a meteor smashes into the ocean, and it's kind of this epic nature behind everything we were seeing on these videos. It was over the top, sensationalist, dramatic drivel, you know. But there was some good information in there about the system, the control systems, and the symbols and everything, and how it works, how the occult works. But I never felt like I could share this with anybody. You know, it was a bridge too far in presentation style. So I wanted to make something that was easy to share, and down to earth. That's kind of my ethos. So my whole channel is basically that, you know, and I try and present the truth in a way that's palatable to a wider audience. And I came up with this phrase. It's kind of like, it's the right information, but it's in the wrong hands. These people are not salesmen who have this stuff. They don't know how to convince other people it's true. They're just rambling like maniacs, you know, and rightly so, because this stuff is terrifying and everyone needs to know. But it's kind of, I think there's a tact that has to be taken to present stuff like this to people, to get them to be open to it. And I have a whole series called Tips for Truthers dedicated to doing just that. You know, how do we share this information effectively? And I've got a whole tangent to go on that, but this is what I started to do in 2014, and I really dived into the biblical research of conspiracy, and I got into the extra biblical texts in Enoch as well after I finished off the main canon, you know, and I got into the extra stuff. And at this time, you had people like Rob Skiba around, and L.A. Marzulli, and Timothy Alberino, and Steve Quayle. These are big names back then, you know. And I listened to like William Cooper as well, who brought more the Christian perspective to it with Behold the Pale Horse, you know. And I kind of started like soaking it all in. You got a lot of end times, tribulation, rapture stuff, but I found this Nephilim pre-flood stuff was very interesting. It was answering a lot of questions for me as somebody who didn't really understand how Christianity could have any answers. Like, how does some Jew in the desert 2,000 years ago be nailed to a piece of wood have anything to do with me whatsoever? You know, it's a hard bridge to gap, like to fill, like, from my perspective. But I found, well, when you understand the problem of sin and also the problem of the Nephilim, it makes a hell of a lot more sense why we have the world we have today. Very quickly, answers were being made for me, you know. The flood was suddenly being justified and understood as a necessity, not a cruel act of some petty vindictive God, but an act of mercy to save humanity from utter corruption. You know what I mean? It's these answers suddenly start coming in, which were like, wow, this is powerful. And now because of my psychedelic background, I always saw the presentations by like people like Rob Skiba. He'd like line up a bunch of Conan the Barbarian, tanned, dreadlocked, loincloth wearing muscle meatheads next to each other, saying, look how tall they were compared to people down here, you know. And then all the way up here, you got this giant on his like chart. But I was like, that's not what they would have looked like. That's too human. Because I was looking at these descriptions of what angels look like from like Ezekiel and Enoch's perspective, and what dragons and the talk of the seraphim and things like this. It's kind of like, if the Watchers were the most trusted of God, and they were probably the seraphim angels who can get close to God on his throne singing holy, 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 because their wings can protect them from his divine light and all this type of thing. It's kind of, well, a seraphim angel is a dragon by any, that's the kind of the ultimate form, you know. But they can look human, they can take any form, the shapeshifters. But dragon seems to be a very common motif throughout human history. Like in every culture, dragons persist. And even in China, it's all about dragons. And even dragons rebelling against the Jade Emperor is one of the main mythoses, you know. And when you get into this, you start seeing parallels to the story of Enoch, and you realize, like, okay, so if the Watchers were dragons and they mated with human women, what would that look like? That would not look like a human being. And you look at like first century historians like Josephus, and he's talking about, oh yeah, the bones of one of the giants are still on display just down the road. He's saying in one of his little like transcripts, and he says, and the look of that thing is unlike anything we've ever seen. Its countenance is terrifying. The way it's shaped isn't human. It's odd. It's weird. You know, like it's people say, like, you look at the descriptions of the Nephilim, like the Zamzu memes, you know, and you break down the etymology. It's like the long-necked ones, or the ones with bellowing, screeching, blood-curdling voices, and it's kind of, these are serpent features, long features, elongated, weird-looking things, you know. So I was trying to imagine, like, what would they have looked like? And I was researching about the nature of demons and spiritual warfare, because I myself started going through some really weird spiritual experiences after I had that moment in that bathtub. It seems like when I was doing psychedelics, nothing came to me. No entities, no jesters, nothing magical or mystical, no clockwork machine elves or self-dribbling basketballs. None of that stuff came to me when I was doing the stuff. I was just going to the psychedelic realm, and I was seeing more of what was there, you know, and I was understanding the nature of the creation, I suppose, and seeing its beautiful geometrical design and purpose and the rest of it. But no consciousness coming to me, no entities, nothing like that. So I started to think, like, well, maybe Joe Rogan's just full of it. You know? maybe Terence McKenna lied to me. But I feel like perhaps they didn't reveal themselves to me when I was doing the stuff, because of what I'm about to explain now about the nature of demons. So when you look into the history of where demons come from, they are the disembodied spirits of these Nephilim I'm talking about, the offspring of watchers mating with human women. And their soul doesn't leave the earth when the body dies. They become disembodied. Now, human souls, because they're ordained by God to exist, they seem to, at least then, they went into some form of stasis. They went to Sheol. And that's to be ready for the resurrection that was to come through Christ and for the judgment at the end of time. But they don't like wander the earth like ghosts or anything. You know what I mean? They're in a very specific place away from the earth now, like a holding cell. But the Nephilim didn't have that fate. They had to wander the earth without a body. That's kind of what Enoch makes very clear. They become wandering spirits that cause problems for everybody on earth until the final eradication at the end of time, when the new heaven and earth comes. They're just kind of a parasite in the machine. They're stuck there, you know. Like, and this is where possession comes from. They want bodies again. So that's why they're always trying to get into people. And once they're in people, they can vicariously experience stuff. So smells, sights, touch, sounds, all that kind of thing, through the vessel they're now in. So when a person who has demons in them eats something, the demon tastes it through your taste buds. In fact, it's like a latching on. It's like a parasitical symbiotic relationship. And it's optimal for demons for you not to know they're there. So they don't really reveal themselves once they're in you. They'd rather make you believe that craving you had for that particular thing was your own choice. But they're subtly influencing you to make these choices and do bad things because they want to feel it again. That's kind of how that's their modus operandi. And I think when my scenario, when I was the drug-taking, smoking, promiscuous, hedonistic, narcissistic psychopath who was buzzing around university doing all these crazy things as a stereotypical art student, the demons were loving it. Great. Like, let's not ruin a good time. Let's not reveal ourselves and overplay our hand here. We've got a perfect vessel. Let's just utilize it, you know? And I think once I gave myself over to Christ, I think they were like, well, if we can't have you, nobody can. And that's when I actually started getting tangible demonic attacks, like horrible, visceral experiences that, you know, sleep paralysis, things trying to choke me, monsters chasing me in my dream, the Hat Man coming after me, telling me I owed him something, and he's coming to collect, and he was trying to kill me. I passed out, and I can only describe it as a brain aneurysm, but my vision started to go black, and I was paralyzed. And the room started to spin into that mandala everyone talks about when you die and your soul leaves your body, you know? And I thought I was dead. I thought, this is it. I'm dying, you know? But I managed to say, Jesus, help me. And instantly it stopped. I shot bolt upright, sweating, and like my body was just doing all sorts of crazy. It was a horrible experience, you know. I feel like it like a demon battling with me. Something was wrenching. It was a horrible wrenching experience. You know what I mean? I can't explain it, but bad things were happening for like a good like 6 to 8 months after that moment. And I had a vision. I went back to the DMT realm. I had what you call a flashback, you know, and suddenly now I'm in front of a giant jester. Like I'm finally seeing one that everyone's talking about. And I'm looking up at this giant. It is a giant. It's like as tall as a skyscraper. I'm looking up at this enormous thing with like gold vehicles whipping around it, like flying around it, like something out of like Star Wars Episode 1, the futuristic cities. You know what I mean? And like it was like the center point of this civilization I'm seeing in this DMT realm. But the creature itself was like blended into the environment. It was like there was no separate. It's DMT stuff. It's really trippy to behold, but it had like a black and white line serpent corn snake pattern going on its skin, and it had these enormous spider leg like horns just protruding out of its skull from all directions, and a massive wide grin, like from ear to ear. This purple lipped, huge mouth smile thing, like you see in the book behind me, you know, like, and it was just looking down at me with these massive glowing golden eyes. Like it was, I'm looking up at this thing for like 10 seconds and I'm back, and I didn't know what to do with that. What do? You shut your mouth and you don't tell anybody what you do. You know what I mean? You just get on with it. And that's what I did for a while, and I sat on that, and I just, that's when I started doing all this research into demons, spiritual warfare, what's going on, what's happening to me, what can I do? And I learned about Jesus can help you with this, and he did. Like I said, I called him his name. He pulled me from death, and slowly they stopped. The more I got into the word, the more I learned, and I think they gave up eventually. But I think that time period, they tried to kill me. I think that's what they were trying to do, because it's kind of like we have to kill him before Christ gets him fully. Like we need to remove him from the world. I think that's what it was. It's like we can't have him anymore. The Holy Spirit's kicked us out, so we can't control him from within, but we can oppress him from outside forces. We can use other people to get to him, you know, and again, horrible things were happening from every direction, you know, from people in my life, as well as just bodily illnesses and other stuff coming upon me. And it was just really, it was mad. Like, and I feel like my study into the spiritual warfare aspect of demons really helped me. And for me, this is like a proving for a fact that this is where the truth is. There's something here, you know. So I can only believe because of my own tangible experiences. I'm not going to convince you just by telling you it's true, you know. Right. But like for me personally, I kind of know, like, because I've seen some things and I've had some experiences. But at the end of the day, like this clown thing suddenly came into place for me when the 2016 clown sightings happened. And in that 2-year period from 2014 to 16, after leaving university, going through all of that, studying the biblical perspective, and understanding what demons are and what they would look like, and having that vision of the DMT jester, I put 2 and 2 together, and I was like, well, if the only thing on the other side of the veil of our perception are the disembodied spirits of Nephilim, then these giant jesters must be the Nephilim. Like, this is what their spirit now looks like. It just seemed logical, you know, like a step-by-step process. And I started searching for this Nephilim jester, Nephilim clown on Google searches and YouTube searches, and nothing came up but one video. And it didn't have clowns on the thumbnail or in the name, but for some reason it came up. So I clicked on it, and it showed like a classic painting of a giant holding down a woman and a man running off in fear. It's like a really well-known painting. And it was a guy making fun of conspiracy theorists. He was pretending to be one, making like a mockumentary style, History Channel style documentary about the Nephilim. And he was like, the Nephilim had red hair and white skin, which can only mean one thing. They were interdimensional killer clowns from out of space, you know, and he was showing like the 80s movie and everything. So he was just having a laugh, you know. He wasn't serious. He wasn't a conspiracy theorist. He wasn't a Christian. He didn't believe in the Nephilim. He was just laughing at people who do. No. But after he made that clown connection, like it just hit me, and I was like, okay, so I'm going to roll with it. Let's see what happens. So I started the study. And like I said, 10 years later, I have this entire thesis laid out with history to back it up and tangible facts that Freemasons have had a hand in all circuses of the modern age, and even the creation of the modern clown costume that we use today. and it is literally modeled after Indian versions of Nephilim, which they call the Rakshasa. And it's just the same costume worn by many ancestor spirit worship cultures found all over the earth, who purposely dress like spirits to let them into their bodies. It's opening up a gateway or a portal to the thing on the other side by mirroring it. You dress like the thing to channel the thing. And when we wear a clown costume, whether you know it or not, you're doing the exact same thing. And this is what I've discovered, and this is why I have the book, The Nephilim Look Like Clowns. I know what it sounds like, but when you actually get into it, this is not just based off of nothing. Right. This is a scholarly work at its best. You know, I've tried to really put everything into this so people can take it seriously. I know it sounds like a tall order, but I don't care about clowns. I'm not like a clown guy. I'm not like a fan of the Insane Clown Posse, or I didn't go to circuses frequently as a child, or I don't care about the Joker. It's not that deep to me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not the clown guy outside of this book or work or anything. Like, I don't care about clowns, but I know more about them than any man should legally have to know about them. I can tell you that right now.
Well, right on.
And that's kind of the step-by-step journey. That's what led to it all. That's why I got to where I am today. It's biblically grounded, the whole theory. And I think thanks to this work, I think in many ways it's a gospel trap as well. I've been told this has answered many questions for people, because I basically give a full Christian contrarian biblical worldview at the start of the book to lay the foundations for where the Nephilim come from. Then the back half of the book is about the clown costumes, clown societies, you know, secret societies and venerations, and also DMT jesters, and the rest of it, kind of the pop culture stuff, is at the end of the book. But people have told me this has helped make them understand Christianity better and give them the perspective, saved them in many ways. So the work itself, it kind of transcended me in many ways. And really, it's the gospel trap. I'd say that's what I'm doing now. I'm trying to bring people to Christ. And in this day and age, it seems like something as novel as the clown is the best way to get people interested in biblical concepts now. It's just the world we live in. And even I think it's crazy. I don't even understand it myself, but that's just where we're at. And that's my work.
Well, let's get deeper into the evidence. As far as biblical references, what are some of the best references that we can cite that would point to Nephilim looking like clowns?
Yeah, well, the Bible doesn't really care about the way they looked. The main canon, what you find is that they don't really dwell on the look of things, but more so their actions. The Bible's wholly concerned with genealogies, the lineage of Christ, and the actions of those nations who rebelled against God. So they don't really talk much about the way people looked in the Bible, especially the Nephilim. In fact, the Nephilim are kind of like a footnote to the main canon of the Bible. You get that small passage in Genesis 6, the sons of God sold the daughters of men and took wives and made offspring, which became giants, mighty men, men of renown. And then it goes on to basically say, and the flood happened afterwards. Yeah. It's kind of skip over it, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like, that bit seemed important. Why don't you explain more about what happened there exactly, you know? And it's because the book of Enoch covers it extensively. And the main canon of the Bible isn't concerned with the details, especially in the early beginning stuff. It's more concerned with just getting to the point, you know, and laying out the chronology of events. So it's written as though it assumes the audience has already read Enoch. You already know about all that. So let's just carry on and talk about the flood and then the genealogies of Noah's children and the nations, you know, because it's all about following the genealogy down through David to Jesus. That's the point, you know. And I think people need to realize that's kind of what the Deuteronomical and the main canon of the Old Testament is about, to justify the arrival of the Savior in the New Testament. But when you get into the extra books, and Rob Skiba liked to call them things like biblically endorsed extra biblical texts. So they're referenced throughout the Bible, you know what I mean? Like as we read in Jasher, or as Enoch said, you know, and then we have to go back and read what Enoch said and what was in Jasher. And you get glimpses now of descriptions of what the Nephilim may have looked like. And it's only through inference can we find anything in the main canon, or the main extra biblical canon of what the Nephilim look like, because there's a book called, in the book of Enoch, there's a book called the Book of Noah, okay, and it talks about the birth of Noah, And his father, I think it was Methuselah, he was freaked out when Noah was born. And he's running to his dad. He's like, I think he's given birth to one of the sons of the angels. Like, he looks like one of the sons of the angel. He looks like a Nephilim is what he said, basically. You know, he looks like one of the sons of the angels. And so now we have something we can latch onto because we get a description of what Noah looked like. And his own father says he looks similar to a Nephilim. No, he didn't say he was a Nephilim. He was just freaked out because he has this. It's odd, you know. It's like he doesn't look like a normal person. He looks different than all of us. Like, it's almost like he's one of the sons of the angels. So we can get an inference here now. And he's described as having a glow. He's glowing, emitting light from his skin. He has glowing eyes, like really bright, burning eyes. His hair is like golden blonde wool or something like this, and he's very pale. Okay, so he has pale skin. So that's our first inference we can get from the biblical text. And if I can get to the chapter here, I did write all this down in the book. Let me just get. I'd rather just get it right than just make it up right now. But let me get to the chapter.
No worries.
I'm talking about Jesus and what he's doing. Biblically accurate angels. And then we get this chapter 12 is biblically accurate Nephilim. And this is where we really cover what we can really get, to be honest. We know that there were giants because in Numbers 13:33 explains that the people who went out into the land of Canaan after the flood were like grasshoppers in their sight, like insects, like bugs, you know. And people are trying to argue, well, it was metaphorical. Like they were. It's like there's no metaphor here. Like when you actually read it, it literally said we went out there and there's giants everywhere and we're like insects to them. We can't fight them. We'll lose. That was basically the report of the mission, you know. And that lack of faith that they couldn't beat giants meant they had to wander the desert for 40 more years before coming back and doing it, you know. That was kind of the problem because they weren't ready. They needed to train more, you know. So that 40 years in the wilderness fighting the Amalekites and the rest of it and battle hardened the nation of Israel. And then they felt confident we can go and kill these giants, no problem, you know. So there was no metaphor involved here. But so we know they were tall. We know they had 6 fingers and 6 toes. This is explained when talking about the giants and the brothers of Goliath. They explained about the digits. We know they were large because it even talks about King Og of Bashan having an iron bed 13 foot long. Like, and it had to be made of iron to support his enormous weight. Like, so we know they were big. We know they had extra digits. And through the inference from Noah, we know they also glowed, had glowing eyes and colorful hair and very pale skin. Now, we get most of our inferences to what they actually look like outside of the Bible. This is actually the truth. That is the fact. I'm not trying to like denigrate the Bible. But you find the Bible wasn't really interested in explaining the way they looked. It wasn't. It was more about what they did that they were concerned with. Now, the name Rephaim, which was given to them after the flood, it seems like they had an undead nature to them, like a zombie-like nature to them after the flood. So it seems like they were resurrected giants after the flood. Somehow their corpses were brought back because Rephaim basically roughly translates to healed ones or those that were healed or healers of some kind. It implies basically they were vampiric in nature, and vampires are infamous for having very pale skin. So that's what we can glean from the Bible. Very little. But let's just look outside of the Bible. Let's look at every other culture on the earth, because I believe the story of the Bible is the story of the earth. Every single culture on the earth is living in God's world. Okay, so it doesn't matter where you look; it's all biblical as far as I'm concerned. You know, and we can bring it in. So let's look at the ancient history of other cultures, and they show you what the giants looked like in artwork. They had pale skin, red hair. They were giants. They had funky colored skin and colored patterns all over that white body. And they had huge grins with tongues sticking out, bucked fangs, large eyes, often glowing blue in some cases. So it matches. It works. It actually works. I think one of the best examples is, like, let's say, through Greek mythology. It's a completely different mythology to the Bible. They got their own mythos. But it's because they're describing an experience with something which was gods who pantheons of gods who kept mixing themselves with women. Right, this is what the Greek story practically is. I think Zeus bear 46 children through separate queens and princesses and all sorts of things of the land. You know what I mean? But not even just him, like Poseidon as well, and they shape shifted to become weird stuff. I think Zeus even became was it Dionysus? I don't know. One of them became some grapes and then raped a woman somehow while being grapes. I don't really understand it, but it happens. Okay. Anyway, offspring, demigods, they call them, half human. But there's one particular story which I think rings true more so to what everywhere else on the earth is telling us. And it's the Gorgons. Medusa is the famous one for this. And when people think of Medusa, you think of a green snake lady with snake for hair. She doesn't actually look like that in the earliest depictions. She actually looks like a human, and doesn't have snakes for hair, but has red dreadlocks. It's very specifically red hair in like a dreadlock form, and she has a white skin, massive eyes, a huge smile with a tongue sticking out, and bucked fangs sticking out from the bottom and the top. She has a human body, muscular, with wings like an angel, and she usually has a horse under her arm with its head sticking out. So she's a giant who can pick up a horse like it's a dog, like it's a puppy. Okay, so a giant, pale-skinned, wide-grinning, bulging-eyed, red-haired, half-angel monster with glowing, massive eyes. Like, this is a Nephilim. This is a quintessential Nephilim. And the story of Medusa, well, they've tragedized it in the future that it was the punishment from, I think, Aphrodite or someone, like, turned this woman into Medusa because she was too beautiful and she was jealous or something like this. And then Perseus came and beheaded her and gave the head to Athena as a gift, and blah, 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 blah. So Medusa's a victim in that story. But if you actually look at the more realistic, non-dramatized, older story of the matter, she was not that. She was the offspring of Typhon, a serpent dragon sea god, mixing with Echidna, a siren, okay, who was a pale-skinned lady with serpent legs. She had legs like snakes, okay? And she's called the mother of monsters. She birthed a lot of chimera hybrid weird creatures with Typhon, her husband, her seraphim sea serpent husband, okay? And Enoch makes it very clear. The women who went astray and mated with the angels became sirens, okay? So Echidna is one of these women who was transformed into a snake lady, a siren, as a result of, or perhaps a punishment, or even a gift from the angels who did this to her for having sex with them. So we don't know why exactly they became sirens, but we know they did. So I reckon it's because birthing giants is a tough, rough ordeal. Most women died. Okay,
Imagine.
They died. You know, that's just the way it was. You know, it was like an alien situation bursting out of them. You know, and I think what the angels did is they genetically engineered the women to be tougher and stronger and able to bear and birth monsters. Okay, so that's the transformation, the genetic engineering process. It's a gift. I'll make you a fearsome creature on the earth that no one would dare go near or attack, and you, in turn, will birth my children. I'll give you power and strength and glory on the earth, and you will be the mother of giants, you know, of mighty men. It was a gift. And in a world, a pre-flood world, which was horrible, full of sinful wickedness, horrible death and destruction and misery and pain and people killing each other and murder and rape and pillage and the rest of it, it's an advantage to be a serpent, terrifying snake lady who no one would dare go near. It's an advantage, you know, it's strength, it's fear. Fear's power in this world. So these women became sirens. Echidna birthed the Gorgons, Medusa being one of them. She also birthed Cerberus, the Hydra, the Chimera, which is like a lion with a goat on its back and a snake for a tail, and all sorts of monsters. She basically birthed them all, including the Gorgons. And the Gorgons are a quintessential Nephilim description. They are identical to everywhere else on the earth where you see these things. She looks just like a Rakshasa demon of India, which is the same thing. Identical, same smile, same tongue sticking out, same bucked fangs, same eyes, same wild, crazy red hair. She looks just like the faces that are on the center of the sundials in North and South America, in the Aztecs and the Mayans and the Inca and the rest of it. Identical imagery. She looks just like the in Peru. There's a thing called the Lanzon, which is in this temple, the sun worship temple, and on that giant podium carved out of stone is a gorgon with the same lips, same smile, same eye, same tongue, continents apart, separated by vast oceans, because everywhere on Earth dealt with this problem of the Nephilim. Every single one of them. And they all have their own culturally specific mythos and stories and ideas and depictions with their own artistic flourishes and aesthetical styles. But when you start just looking at the aesthetical similarities, you realize they're all discussing the same creatures. Because this is what the Nephilim looked like, okay? And they looked like clowns by today's standards. White skin, often red polka dots, you even got a red nose in some extreme cases, big wide red lips, smiling mouth with sharp fangs. It looks like a smile from the front, but they just inherited it from the serpentine fathers. Snakes can practically dislocate their jaw to eat something. They have a huge maws from ear to ear. That's probably just inherited. Like dragons will have the same thing. And when you look at that, when you look at a lizard from the front, it looks like it's smiling at you because of it. It's not. It's just the shape of its mouth, okay? But these are the features that were adopted into the caricature we call a clown. And that's all it is. It's a caricature of what the real thing looked like. And the people who created this know this. They know what they're doing, okay? They're mirroring something which is now in the spirit realm to create a channel. That's why Shriners dress like them. That's why clowns are very popular in Freemasonry. You know, they know exactly what it's all about. That's why the highest order in the fraternal order is the Royal Order of the Jesters, a step above shrining. Okay, because they know what they're dealing with here. But that's the narrative. That's one example. If you go to Australia, for example, they have a different type of serpent snake hybrid called the Wangina. And the Wanginas, you look at them, they look like clowns. And I'm not even joking. They look like a quintessential big red fluffy afro, white skin with a ruffle around the neck and pom-poms going down the polka dot clothing clowns. And these are ancient, primordial creator gods of this culture, which are revered as so sacred, only the shaman is allowed to repaint the rock paintings every year to keep them alive. And if any other culture steals the image of a Wangina, it is of the most highest order of disrespect and blasphemy to them, and they will come after you, even kill you in extreme cases for doing such a thing. But you look at this thing, it's just clowns. They look like clowns. Like, it's not even like, I'm not even exaggerating. I wish you could get a picture up and show people. If you can, like, I would recommend it. Just Google search Wandjina, Wandjina, and you will see what I'm talking about. And what's the creation myth of these things? They are the product of the rainbow serpents, flying snakes, dragons, mixing with the earth, human women from the dust of the earth to create these primordial rain controlling weather gods called the Wanginas, who then taught mankind all sorts of things like metallurgy, fires, civilization, growing food, all this type of stuff. Okay, so they are the creators of that civilization, and that's what the Nephilim did. They were heroes of renown originally. As they got bigger, they started eating people because the food that they were growing wasn't enough anymore, and it's kind of the hunger, the evil nature just got the better of them in the end. And they were heroes at first and monsters by the end. If you look at the Sani Yucca of Sri Lanka, it's birthed from a queen who died at birth, and she was impregnated, and the king said, "That is not my child. I don't know where that thing's come from, but it's not my child. So, and I certainly didn't get you pregnant." So she's kicked out and dies at childbirth, birthing this disgusting monster who is in a pit of bodies. Okay, that's where the bodies get thrown. They get thrown into this giant pit in this culture. He eats the bodies. That's how he lives and grows very quickly. Okay, and then once he comes out from the pit, he eats and kills everybody in the village, including his father. Okay, but that was not his son. This queen had been impregnated by something, and created this monster. And you look at the Sanayuka, it looks just like the Gorgon. It looks just like the thing on the Lanzon in South America. It looks like the same thing. It looks like the Oni of Japan, or the Rangda, the demon queen of Balinese culture. Identical looking monster with the exact same features, holding people. It's a giant, you know. It's a human lizard hybrid with a massive wide smile. Looks like really happy about what it's doing, eating and killing people. I think in the epic, Buddha has to come and pacify it or something like this. They've got their own mythos surrounding how these things were defeated, but the thread you start to link between all these cultures and the way they depicted these man-eating giants, they're all the same, and you can get a very, very clear picture of what they look like once you start doing it. And yes, they looked just like clowns, just like them.
We have researchers like L.A. Marzulli that believe that the elongated skulls that are being found across the planet, the ones that aren't cradle-boarded, or the artificial elongation techniques that they were using, were that of the Nephilim or ancient giants. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think they had elongated features, serpentine features, more stretched out features. Those skulls have way more volume than a human skull. You can crush a skull, and people did do that, you know, because it was a symbol of power and wealth. Why? Why is it a symbol of power to have an elongated skull? It's because giants were walking around with that, and they were the kings and rulers of a very ancient past, and people emulate power. They copy it, you know? It's like the practice of making the neck longer with those rings. Why? It's because these things had elongated features, and perhaps in that region, they had particularly long necks, like the Zamzu memes described in the Bible. Maybe they were trying to copy something because it's a beauty standard, you know? And this is why you find most of these odd body modification practices have come from an understanding that represents something powerful, something worth copying. Okay, or a beauty standard. And I think it all comes from the Nephilim, including the elongated skulls. You even see in clown costumes having an elongated forehead that's exaggerated even more so, with like the hair coming out the side, is a common trait in the costume, and they wear skull caps for that reason, that actually make the forehead look bigger, because they're trying to copy something, which is the Nephilim. So I think they did have elongated skulls, and I think there were many. Because the Nephilim were around for a long time throughout history, even up into probably the relatively modern history. We have encounters like the Paiute Indians in the city Ka, for example. Very, very well-known story. The Paiutes were fighting with this tribe of man-eating, white-skinned, red-haired giants in the plains of America, you know. And they ended up pleading with them to just stop killing us, be normal humans, like stop eating people, please, you know, live peaceably with us. And they were like, nope, we're going to keep doing it. Screw you, you're a human. Why should we do what you have to say, you know, basically. And they ended up putting them into surrounding them in Lovelock Cave, the remnants of these man-eating monsters. And after that final plea and a refusal, they set fire to the entrance of the cave and smoked and killed them all, wiped them out. But when the fire went and they went into the cave, it looked like some may have escaped through the back, because it just kept going and going and going, you know. So there is that as well. But that was a war between giants, relatively in modern history. Through all history, the story continues, you know. And there's even one woman of that tribe who, up until like the early 1900s, was doing university tours talking about her tribe's history, and that story was a part of it. And she had what's called a mourning dress, which is passed down through generations, made out of the red hair of the slain giants. It's this giant red fluffy shawl she would wear. Okay, and there's pictures of her in it. You know? And they said the claim is it's made from the scalps of the slain giants that they were fighting with, and it's red, bright red, you know. So I think absolutely these skulls we're finding, especially in the Americas, that are elongated, I think that it's because of the Nephilim. And again, they were there till the modern age. So I think as generations went by, they got smaller. They got more, because it seems like they have a fertility issue. They need humans to procreate.
You think there's
they can't
still
just procreate themselves?
Remnants, at least bloodline remnants?
Maybe. I think there's certainly people around who believe themselves to be the remnants. Whether that's true or not, I have no idea. They practically look human these days. This is what I'm saying. I think it's got to the point where They're not the OG giant half angel, half human clown lizard dragon monstrosities I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know, I think as each successive generation went by, they got shorter and more human as they mixed and mingled with humans more with each passing generation. There was no pure blood. They need human women to procreate. In fact, there is a book, the Book of King Og of Bashan. It's his own canonical book about his own. It's not part of the Bible. It's not canon, but as a standalone book about that giant I mentioned with the 13-foot bed. You read that thing, and he is just. It's basically like it's not even a long book, but all he's doing for the duration of the whole thing is just screaming with anger and rage about how what's his name? The one who built the Tower of Babel. I don't know why I'm going to blank on this. I mean, have a whole thing about him. Nimrod, that's it, right? Nimrod basically killed the promised child, the star moon child or something like this. And it was going to be a woman who would solve the fertility problem of his race, the giants. Okay. And she was going to be able to continue the giant race through a birthing process. But then Nimrod just comes and kills her. So he's like, the whole book is just him raging that Nimrod ruined the prophecy. Okay. But it's made clear in that book, the giants can't procreate without humans. They have a problem. They can't continue their numbers, and they know when they die they're stuck on the other side, and it's kind of trying to avoid this and continue the race in a sense, you know. So I think because they have to mate with the human woman to continue, I think this creates lesser Nephilim each time, who only have a tiny bit of Nephilim DNA as they went down. So I think by the time the Paiutes were fighting these red-haired giants, they weren't like as big as the mountains of the original Titans. They were like 9 foot, 13 foot, maybe 12 foot tall. You know, they weren't quite like towering. I mean, 12 foot tall is tall. You see that, it's still pretty damn scary, you know. I mean, I'm like 5'7". That's more than double my height. That would be a hell of a thing to see, you know. But it's still scary, but not quite the OG original Nephilim, literally who got to the size of possibly the clouds for all we know. You know, the way they described these original Titans, it was ridiculous how big they got. It just got out of hand, which is why they needed a flood. You know, it was just too much. So if there are Nephilim around today, they're probably practically human, which is why I think when you talk about Christ's redemption, he's come to a time where the earth is utterly corrupt, and he's offered redemption to anybody who believes in him, even the Gentiles. And even the word Gentile, I think, comes from gentil, which is from the Basque people in Spain. And the gentile were giants. They were hairy giants of the European flavor. I think in colder climates, they were hairier. In warmer climates, they were practically naked with no hair whatsoever. So in India, the Rakshasa are practically bald and skin hairless. But I think in the northern climates, like Europe and America, they're Sasquatch. It's wild men, hairy wild beasts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think depending on where they are in environment, there's variety. But the hairy ones were definitely in the colder environments. That much is very clear. And like I said, I think they're not a monolith in the way they look. I'm talking in generalities and aesthetical similarities of ancient artwork. I think as they went into the modern age, I think the adaptation to environment took place with each successive generation, and a more humanization took place with each passing generation. Like I said, royal families, I think they believe they have the divine right to rule because of their blood. I think that's because they believe they have angel blood, going back to the original Nephilim, which are half angel, half human. Yeah. So I think that's where they get that blue blood ideology from. But you look at them; they're human. They're practically human now. They're not. It's a moot point. It doesn't matter anymore. We're probably all corrupted by it by this point. You know what I mean? But the point of the flood and the point of Christ was to destroy the infrastructure they created, the kingdoms they created, to destroy their grip on the earth. And I think that was a success. I think it was a success because prior to the flood, they owned everything. They had every kingdom under their rule. They were working on behalf of their fallen angel fathers and pantheons. They won. They had won by any. The only person left that was still human by that point was Noah. and he was perfect in his generations, as it explains. Even his sons may not have been great. Maybe his wife, Namar, was not perfect, you know, and therefore his subsequent sons weren't perfect, and therefore the Nephilim gene came back in a recessive way, and which caused more problems in the future. But the infrastructure that they created, where all mankind was dominated, was certainly wiped out. And I think a lot of what we see today is trying to reclaim that hold. I think Rome was a big attempt to reclaim that worldwide monolithic governance, you know, and even in the modern age now, they're trying to do it through the New World Order and the Great Work. They're trying to always reclaim this world domination, you know, that they had before the flood, albeit now through more proxy means of influencing people from the spirit realm in the physical realm to do their bidding for them. You know, I think it's a bit of a complicated mess now. But I think there are some people out there who really would like to believe they are like a true descendant of the Nephilim and were special. But I think a lot of it's just bluster and lies to make them play on their own ego in many ways. I think that's probably a healthier way of viewing it, because what are you supposed to do?
Right.
Like, okay, so that person over there, all right, so he's a Nephilim, is he? Because he's got pale skin or something, and he has Rh negative blood. Some people think things like that. Oh, so what are you going to do then? There's only one thing to do to a demon, right? Kill it. So you're going to go around just killing people you assume might be a Nephilim? Like, it leads to a really bad, like, train of thought, which is why I think the whole idea that salvation came to all men and Gentiles and Jews alike was the idea that, look, everyone's corrupt. You've all fallen short. Everything's ruined. This creation got destroyed when the Nephilim were created. All you can do now is be born again and wait for the new heaven and earth, so you can have your place in it where everything's back to as it should be in Eden before the fall and before the corruption took place. So I think that's why the Christian message can be more powerfully understood once you get this Nephilim narrative involved, and why it's necessary. And it can come into things like bloodlines. Even Paul made it clear, like, do not obsess over pointless genealogies. It doesn't matter anymore. It means nothing. It's done. It's over. That world's over. Like, we have good news. You can forget about all that now. Like, we can finally just get on with the matter at hand, which is the salvation and redemption of mankind. Yeah. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, right on.
Anyway, back to you. Sorry.
No worries. I know from myself and many others, when we think of clowns, we think of the circus. And I know you cover the occult roots of the circus. For the last few minutes, let's get into that a bit.
Sure. Well, the circus originally was created by somebody called Philip Astley in like the early 1700s, maybe mid 1700s-ish, around that time. And it was horse tricks. It was actually running around in a circle on a horse and then like standing up on it and standing up with one hand, or having four horses and you spread your legs on them and stuff. And Philip Astley was a ex-general for the British Army who knew how to ride a horse, you know, and so he kind of transferred that skill when he came back into public and opened up his, so I think it's called something like Philip Astley's something amphitheater, a really long-winded, silly name, you know, and that quintessentially is what people credit as the first circus. It had a ring and it had a funny man doing funny tricks, you know, and an audience. But it came quite a while afterwards did circuses as we know them kind of come into fruition. So what you're going to talk about now is the rise of pantomime in the UK, in Britain. So pantomime is a thing that comes at the end of like a show or a drama on stage, a theatre. The pantomime part was like the fun at the end. And this is where the clown was created in British theatre. And it was modelled after the Commedia dell'arte, travelling troupe of performers that came out of Italy through the Middle Ages. Now, Britain took those stock characters and adapted them for the British stage play. And in the most popular, famous version of this is Joseph Grimaldi. He's the king of clowns. He's like the one who created the modern clown costume we know today. So called, they credit him for it, but he didn't actually create it. That's not true at all. But they try and say it is, but it's just not the case. So he was popular in the late 1700s, early 1800s. He had a very short stint of being headlining because it took a toll on his body, and he basically died a cripple and couldn't move anymore and was in agony because of all the tricks he'd been doing his entire life, tumbling around on stage, breaking his arm, shooting his foot with a prop gun, all sorts of horrible things happened to him, you know. But he was hilarious, and he was like the most funniest man in the world by this point. And he popularized the clown by donning a costume that was given to him by the son of a Freemason called Charles Dibdin. And Charles Dibdin Jr., because his father was also called Charles Dibdin, by the way, just to complicate things. But his son, Charles Dibdin Jr., was running Sadler's Wells Theatre at that time at behest of his father's request to the owner of the theatre, Richard Hughes, to do this for his son. Nepotism. Can you give my son a job? You know, and that's what happened. Yeah, he can run the theatre for me. You know, typical rich, this theatre that everybody goes to, you know, and loves. So he started running the shows there, and he gave Grimaldi a leading role as the lead clown. And there's a whole complicated reason why that happened, because of internal politics between family members. Joseph Grimaldi was married to the daughter of Richard Hughes, who owned the theatre. She died at childbirth, and then said, give my would-be son-in-law a decent role, please. My daughter begged me that I'd look after him before she died. Really weird stuff, really tragic, horrible things happening behind the scenes. But Joseph Grimaldi, this person who's always been in theatre, was abused as a child by his performing father, never left the theatre, suddenly got given a leading role, and they dressed him in this brand new dress, which was borrowed from Indian iconography. And that's the clown costume we have today. And he just became clown. He was the guy who just really worked it, you know. And from that day forward, that was the standard. Like, all modern clowns are modeled after this man, Joseph Grimaldi, in this type of costume. It was never before seen. It was colorful. It was bright. It was wacky. It was insane. It was crazy and terrifying and just something completely out there. Prior to this, the role of clown was just servant. So he dressed like an Elizabethan servant with white rags and a ruffle, you know, nothing special. Now he's this psychedelic monster. You know what I mean? So everyone was like, wow, crazy. The son who ran up this show was like applauded as like the greatest showrunner on the earth. And, you know, he really made his impact on the industry, which is probably what he wanted to do. But his father, Charles Dibdin Sr., loved India, traveled there all the time. His brother was serving there in the East India Company. He clearly just stole the image of a Rakshasa demon off one of the temples and just dressed Joseph Grimaldi like it. That's clearly what happened. I've shown in my book, on my videos, side-by-side comparisons, identical costume. It's just a plagiarism of Indian iconography of demons. Anyway, fast forward, now we have the clown. It kind of leaves theatre in the future. Theatre pantomime kind of dies off a little bit, you know, and then suddenly we have Richard Hughes and Charles Dibdin opening their own thing called the Royal Circus. So this is the first time the circus appears as a name for something like this. Prior to that, it's Philip Astley's amphitheatre of horse tricks and bazaar, something or other. And now we have the Royal Theatre, run by a Freemason called Charles Dibdin and his rich friend Richard Hughes, you know, the one who ran that Sadler's Wells Theatre I was telling you about. So they keep it together, you know, they always work together on these things. And clowns were incorporated into the circus during this time. So the whole point of a clown was to entertain the crowd while the scene changed in the background. Because it was performances, big epics, you know what I mean? Like boats crashing into oceans in the background, and then they have to switch to land. So the clown comes out, you know what I mean? And then while everyone's rushing around to change the scenery for the clowns doing silly tricks and tightrope walks and juggling. And so that's where that kind of began. And then they tried to popularize it in America, and many of these other circuses popped up modeling this Freemason creation originally. And they tried to bring it over to America. And it turns out the stationary stage performance just didn't work. Like, they kept burning down, and a lot of people lost money and gave up, and they couldn't quite break into America, this idea of like this type of performance. It still involved horse tricks, you know, but it seems like stationary amphitheaters just kept burning down. It's just an odd, they all burnt down, every single one of them, right? So everyone kept losing all their money. And then eventually, really late to the game, this man was 60 years old when he decided, I'm going to get involved in circuses. I've teamed. He's called Phineas Taylor Barnum, P.T. Barnum. Everyone knows P.T. Barnum. Teamed up with Bailey to basically put on a traveling circus. The railroad at that time was developing in America, and they found that, okay, well, we can make this thing like a tent that we can take with us and move around the country with, and we can just put on temporary shows and then move on. Like, it's a different model to the stationary theaters which Britain was doing, which just didn't catch on in America, which was a very advancing West type of nation at this time, you know. So it was they had to kind of go with the times, and because of the railways being built, they had this ability, and they created this big top tent situation. And Phineas Taylor Barnum was a con man, a charlatan. He was a member of Freemasonry, particularly the Odd Fellows. For example, King George V was a member of the Odd Fellows. So was Albert Pike. He was a member of the Odd Fellows, but so was Charlie Chaplin. World leaders and comedians and actors all together in one little secret society. Very odd. Very odd. Like, I'm talking like presidents, senators, as well as businessmen and entertainers and musicians and kings of all over the earth were members of this society. It's very strange, very strange. I've got many theories about that, but basically this charlatan who was a member of this Freemasonic cult took over the industry of circuses in America, and he invented the three-ring circus. Now, 3 interlocking rings just happens to be the main logo of the Oddfellows. So can it be a surprise he invented the 3-ring circus? You know, he was clearly embedding his own society's symbolism into something that he was creating. And he brought it with it animals and menageries and clowns and the rest of it, you know, and that kind of became synonymous with the whole thing. And if you actually look into the early circuses of America, they were all run by Freemasons, every single one of them. And they all got together, like 10 different circuses run by different people, including the Ringling Brothers, who were all Freemasons as well. And they put on this giant show called King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. And every costume was made by the companies who made the costumes of Freemason halls. Every backdrop was made by the companies that made all the backdrops for the rituals in the Freemason halls. Everything was done through Freemasonry affiliated companies, every single step of this story. Because Freemasons love King Solomon. They're obsessed with the guy. It's about building his temple and the rest of it, and Solomonic magic and all these type of things. And it turns out, you know, if you look at a circus, you have the ringleader, the ringmaster, and it turns out King Solomon had a magic ring he could use to control demons to build his temple. Now, this is where you can start to see the parallels here and what was really going on. If you go to any lodge in Freemasonry, they'll tell you the Grand Worshipful Master of the lodge, the head of the lodge, is the only one who's allowed to wear a hat inside the lodge. It's often a top hat. It's usually a top hat, but it can change based on region. Sometimes a cowboy hat in Texas, you know what I mean? They have their own thing going on, but it's a top hat primarily because it represents the crown of Solomon. That's what they'll tell you. There's public knowledge. It's not even a hidden thing. Like, that's why they do it, you know? So the ringleader, the ringmaster, who wears a black top hat, is King Solomon in the circus ritual, which is all run by Freemasonry. It's a copy of what happens in the lodge, just on a grander scale, what we call a circus. And the ringmaster orchestrates the clowns, which are representations of demons, to build the show or build the temple. It's the same thing. It's Solomon orchestrating demons to build a temple. It's the ringmaster orchestrating clowns to put on the show. Okay, it's all just Solomonic demon invocation rituals hidden under veneers of something fun for the kids and just a bit of entertainment. It's a cult. It's an occult thing. Yeah. You're not supposed to know what it really represents, but to the initiated, they can understand exactly what it all represents. Right on. And that's it. That's circuses. And all modern circuses in America pretty much are still run by Shriners today. Shrining kind of took over. It became the gig. Mm-hmm. And all Shriners have a clown section within the lodges. And again, if you want to be a Royal Order of the Jester, you have to have been a Shriner and a Freemason in good standing throughout all those. And you have to be invited only. And when you get to that level, what those guys get up to and what's public knowledge as well, and what they've been caught doing, horrible, disgusting stuff. It gets really dark. And that's circuses in a nutshell for you there. Like, they started off innocent enough, horse tricks running around a ring, but they were adopted and co-opted and called a circus, and clowns are integrated by Freemasons.
Right on. This is great.
Through and through.
Compelling information, Paul. We'll definitely have to do this again. Next time, maybe we'll get a break from the clowns and we'll get into some other things. I know you cover so much of the same topics that we do here, so really enjoyed this discussion. Before I let you go, remind the audience how they can find your work.
Just go to YouTube, Understanding Conspiracy. You can't miss it. It looks just like this. And yeah, if you want to get a copy of the book, it's on Amazon. There's also an audio book as well. If you go to Amazon, it links you there to all the versions you can get of it. And that's it. That's what you'll find.
Excellent. Paul, like I said, we'll definitely be doing this again in the future. And until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We'll talk again tomorrow. We'll see y'all then. Watch Doors of Perception, now on Amazon Prime. You can now stream the forbidden documentary Occult Louisiana free on Tubi TV. If you're looking to start your therapeutic microdosing journey, but don't know where to start, especially when looking for the highest quality ingredients, including nootropics, and what you'd expect from a true microdose capsule, check out our friends at Brainsupreme. They offer the absolute highest quality ingredients so you can start your microdosing journey knowing that you're getting top-notch ingredients. To find out more, visit their website using that link right in the description, and you can get 15% off your entire order. Hello friends, I am so excited to tell you about Independent Media Token. Independent Media Token is a brand new way to show your support for independent media without having to donate a dime. Independent Media Token is a cryptocurrency on the Solana blockchain designed to generate funds to promote and foster the growth of independent content creators, allowing them to engage in their art without having to worry about being demonetized. Through a network of media partners, of which you yourself can become a part of, Independent Media Token's goal is to ensure the powers that be can never cut off all of our areas of funding and censor the only free voices left in the world. Join the movement today. You can pick up Independent Media Token using Phantom Wallet or the Solana wallet of your choice, where you can easily swap your Solana for IMT. Grab some IMT today and remember to always know your team. To learn more, visit independentmediatoken.com or use the link right in the description. Are you and your family prepared for an emergency? Maybe the fake alien invasion? Now is the time to prepare yourself and your family for any event. Check out Prep Starts Now. Their mission is to provide high-quality preparedness products that empower individuals and families to be ready for any situation. They're committed to delivering reliable, trusted gear to ensure your safety, security, and peace of mind in times of need. Their product selection is carefully curated to provide you with the essential gear you need to stay prepared. From emergency kits to tactical tools, every item is chosen for its reliability and practicality. Prep Starts Now understands the importance of family, and their goal is to equip you with everything you need to build a solid plan for your family's preparedness. In today's ever-changing world, being prepared is more important than ever, and Prep Starts Now is here to help you and your family stay ready with quality products and practical guidance. Use the link in the description and get 15% off your order. We live in an incredible age of information. More and more, we're discovering that we've been lied to and misled about much of our human history. Cory Hughes is providing profound revelations about World War I, World War II, the JFK assassination, Martin Luther King's assassination, and much, much more on his new Substack, Bloody History. Subscribe now for as little as $5 monthly. Just click that link right in the description to get started now and learn about our true history.